Hello, I trust that you're well. Welcome to All is Catholic Corner. In this session, let's look at a very great man in the Catholic history, that is Saint Thomas Aquinas. On 6th December 1273, during the feast of Saint Nicholas, a brilliant 48-year-old friar was celebrating Mass when something happened to him. A profound experience, a vision, or an intellectual awakening struck him with the force of a quiet thunderbolt. And afterward, he systematically laid down his quill. He refused to write another word. And when his faithful secretary, Brother Reginald of Pipeno, begged him to return to his life's work, the monumental Summa Theology, the towering friar simply looked at him and said, "Reginald, I cannot. All that I have written seems like straw to me compared to what I have seen and what has been revealed to me." Who was this man whose unfinished straw would become the intellectual bedrock of Western civilization? He was a quiet radical, a captive son, a colossal mind, and ultimately an angelic doctor. This is the story of Thomas of Aquino. Thomas was born around the year 1225 into a world defined by rigid structures, feudal warfare, and deep religious devotion. His family, that is the accounts of Aquino, were minor nobility, with powerful connections to the Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II. They had grand designs for their youngest son. At just 5 years old, little Thomas was sent down the mountain to the historical Benedictine Abbey of Monte Cassino. His family's ambition was cynical but practical. That is, they expected Thomas to climb monastic ranks and eventually become the abbot of Monte Cassino, a position of immense political power and wealth that would benefit the family estate. Even as a child, Thomas was consumed by a singular quest for truth. However, political turmoil would soon tear him away from the monastery. When the emperor's troop occupied Monte Cassino around 1239, 14-year-old Thomas was moved to the newly founded University of Naples to complete his education. It was there that his world exploded. In Naples, Thomas encountered two forces that would define his destiny, that is, the newly rediscovered works of the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle and the order of preachers, popularly known as Dominicans. Unlike the wealthy, stable Benedictines, the Dominicans were a mendicant order. They owned nothing, they begged for food, they lived in urban areas, and they prioritized rigorous intellectual study to combat heresy. And to the aristocratic house of Aquino, joining a group of literal beggars was an absolute disgrace. And in 1244, on the direct orders of his mother, Theodora, Thomas was ambushed and kidnapped by his own brothers. They dragged him back to the family fortress at Rocaseca and locked him in a tower. And for over a year, his family kept him a prisoner, utilizing every psychological tactic to break his resolve. They offered him wealth, they offered him power and titles. He refused them all. According to tradition, that night Thomas fell asleep, or he fell into a deep sleep and was visited by two angels. The two angels guarded his waist with a cord of perpetual chastity. Realizing their son's iron will could not be broken, the family eventually staged an escape, allowing him to climb out of a window in a basket and into the waiting arms of his Dominican brethren. He was free and he was heading to Paris. Thomas traveled north to the University of Paris and then to Cologne to study under the greatest scientific and philosophical mind of the era, that is Albert of Cologne, later known as Albert the Great. Thomas was quiet, he was humble, and massive in physical stature. His classmate mistook his silence for lack of intelligence, mocking him with the nickname the Dumb Ox. Albert recognized that Thomas was not silent because he lacked thoughts, but because his mind operated with an intensity that left him perpetually deep in contemplation. And Albert introduced Thomas to the full corpus of Aristotle, a dangerous, volatile philosophy that was currently turning Christendom upside down. And to understand the work of Thomas, one must understand the intellectual crisis on the 13th century. The works of Aristotle had been preserved and commented upon by brilliant Islamic and Jewish scholars like Averroes and Maimonides. And when these texts flooded Western universities, they caused a panic. Traditionalists wanted Aristotle banned, arguing that human reason was corrupted by sin and that relying on a pagan philosopher would destroy the Christian faith. On the other side, secular radicals argued that what is true in philosophy could be false in theology, the so-called double truth theory. Thomas rejected both camps and he stepped into the breach to forge the ultimate synthesis. His guiding principle was revolutionary in its simplicity, that is, grace does not destroy nature but perfects it. For Thomas, both human reason and divine revelation come from the same exact source, God. Therefore, true philosophy and true faith can never fundamentally contradict one another. If reason is used correctly, it always points toward the Creator. Thomas did not Christianize Aristotle. He used Aristotelian logic as a precision tool to articulate Christian truth. Thomas' literary output over a 20-year career was staggering, totaling over 8 million words. He wrote exhaustive commentaries on the Bible, defended his order against academic rivals, and produced beautiful liturgical hymns. His legacy is anchored by three. That is, the first one being Summa contra Gentiles. That is the book of the truth, the book on the truth of the Catholic faith against the errors of the infidels. Written as an intellectual handbook for missionaries, this work is a masterpiece of philosophical theology. It relies primarily on the natural cause rather than the scripture to demonstrate the existence of God and the immortality of the soul, meeting non-Christian thinkers on shared rational ground. The other one is the disputed questions, born out of the highly competitive public academic debates at the University of Paris. These texts show Thomas at his sharpest, tackling incredibly specific problems regarding truth, soul, evil, and the power of God with surgical precision. And the third one being Summa Theologiae, that is the summary of theology. His undisputed magnum opus began 1265. The massive work was intended simply as an introductory textbook for beginner theology students. It is structured with absolute breathtaking logic, divided into three massive parts, using a rigid question and answer format. There you can see them on your screen. His monumental writings. Then we have the 5 ways and the angelic mind. Perhaps the most famous segment of Thomas' entire body of works is the Quinquiviae, that is the 5 ways he proves the existence of God, using nothing but observation of the physical world and human logic. In the first way, we have argument from motion. Everything in the universe is in a state of change or motion. Whatever is moved must be moved by something else, but this change cannot go back to infinity, or there would be no first mover, and therefore no motion at all. Therefore, it is necessary to arrive at a first mover, put in motion by no other, and this everyone understands to be God. The second way is argument from efficient cause. Nothing can cause itself to exist. If you can trace the chain of causes back, you must eventually find an uncaused first cause that kicked off the domino effect of reality. In the third way, argument from contingency. Physical things come into being and pass away. They are contingent, meaning they don't have to exist. If everything were contingent, at one time nothing existed and nothing would exist now. Therefore, there must be a necessary being that owes its existence to nothing else. In the fourth way, argument from gradation, we notice that things in the world are more or less good, true or beautiful. But more or less implies a standard of perfection. There must exist something which is the absolute truest, the best, and most fully being the source of all perfections. And the fifth way is the teleological argument. We see unintelligent things in nature like planets orbiting or seeds growing, acting with purpose, predictably. They have a sieve guided by an arrow to a target. They must be guided by an intelligent cosmetic archer. Before we get to his journey of or to sainthood, let's look at the transubstantiation and poetry. Thomas was not a cold, unfeeling logic machine. He was deeply mystical and profound pastoral, and in 1264, Pope Urban IV instituted the new feast of Corpus Christi and asked Thomas to compose the entire liturgical service and hymns for it. Thomas responded by writing some of the most enduring, heartbreaking, beautiful poetry in human history. Hymns like the Pange Lingua, that is including Tantam Ego, Panis Angelicus, and Adoro Te Devote. It was also Thomas who provided the theological vocabulary for the mystery of the Eucharist, transubstantiation. Using Aristotelian concepts, he explained that during consecration, the underlying substance, the deep reality of what the bread and wine actually are, is completely changed into the body and blood of Christ, where the accidents, that is, that the physical properties like taste, texture, smell, and appearance remain entirely those of bread and wine. And following his mystical experience in late 1273, Thomas' health began to fail rapidly. He seemed detached from the world, and his mind already resting on another horizon. In early 1274, Pope Gregory X summoned Thomas to attend the Council of Lyon in France to help heal the schism between the Western and Eastern churches. Despite his physical weakness, Thomas obeyed, setting out on a donkey. Realizing he was dying, his companions carried him to a nearby Cistercian abbey of Fossanova. The monks there treated the legendary theologian with immense reverence. As he lay on his deathbed, the monks asked him to give them a brief commentary on the biblical love poem, the Song of Songs. Even at the very end, Thomas taught. And on March 7, 1274, at the age of 49, Thomas Aquinas closed his eyes for the last time. The impact of his death was immediate, but his journey to official sainthood faced obstacles. Since his synthesis of Aristotle was so bold, certain conservative bishops, including the Archbishop of Paris in 1277, initially condemned several philosophical propositions associated with Thomas' teaching. However, the sheer holiness of his life, his absolute humility, the clarity of his doctrine quickly vindicated him, and during his canonization process, an objection was raised that Thomas had performed few dramatic, flashy, public miracles. Pope John the 12th famously dismissed the objection, declaring he performed as many miracles as he wrote articles. And on 18th July 1323, less than 50 years after his death, Pope John the 13th, Pope John the 22nd, he's also the one who declared that Thomas performed as many miracles as he wrote articles. So on 18th July 1323, Pope John XXII officially canonized Thomas Aquinas. And in 1567, Pope Pius V declared him a doctor of the church, cementing his place alongside giants like Augustine and Jerome. And in 1879, Pope Leo XIII issued the encyclical Iterum Patri, that is declaring Thomism, that is a philosophy of Thomas Aquinas, to be officially definitive philosophical foundation for all Catholic theology. Today, St. Thomas Aquinas is celebrated across the global church on the 28th January, the date his relics were transferred to France. And due to his unmatched intellect, absolute purity of intent, and life spent in the academy, he is universally recognized as the patron saint of universities, colleges, and schools. He's also the patron saint of students, academics, and theologians. He's also the patron saint of booksellers and publishers, as well as the patron saint of purity and chastity. 750 years later after his death, the work of Thomas Aquinas remains surprisingly vibrant and vital. In a modern world often fragmented by a perceived war between science and religion, Thomas' enduring legacy is his unwavering conviction that truth is one, whether discovered by a telescope, whether discovered by a mathematical equation, or through divine revelation. All truth meets at the summit. He was the giant who built a bridge of light between ancient Greece and medieval Europe, between the cold mechanics of logic and the burning fire of mystical love. The dumb ox who bellowed, and whose voice still echoes through the corridors of time. That is the amazing story of St. Thomas of Aquinas. Thank you for joining us. Kindly like the video, leave a comment, share, and also don't forget to subscribe to All Is Catholic Corner. Until our next session, keep praying. Let's keep growing in faith together. See you in our next session. God bless you. Bye bye.